feel like this story is a good time to remind people that the number of suspects that we have in the Epstein investigation that have been arrested is zero. The number of people that we have had investigated for any of the corruption that we have going on in the government right now, zero. The number of people that we have arrested and sentenced to over 30 to 100 years in prison for Antifa-related activity, 8. 8 protesters accused by feds of Antifa ties get up to 100 years in Texas Immigration Center shooting. 8 protesters accused by the Justice Department of having ties to Antifa were sentenced Tuesday to decades in federal prison over a shooting outside a Texas immigration detention center that wounded a police officer and prosecutors called an act of terrorism. One of the defendants, a former U.S. Marine Corps reservist convicted of opening fire during the July 4th demonstration outside the Prairie Land Detention Center near Dallas, was sentenced to 100 years in prison, the maximum punishment. Now, I don't know the legal code in all 50 states. Do you get 100 years for wounding a police officer in any other context? I've never heard of anyone being maybe sentenced to life. I don't know, but 100 years for wounding a police officer? The lengthy sentences were condemned by family members and supporters in a news conference outside the federal courthouse in Fort Worth. Hope Song, whose son Benjamin Song received the heftiest sentence, disputed prosecutors' claims that her son shot the officer and said he didn't intend to hurt anyone. U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor, and I think it's important to put the face behind the names that make these kinds of decisions. So here is this cockeyed Texas judge fuck. One of the 2 judges overseeing the proceedings said what happened wasn't a protest, but, quote, an assault on democracy. The need to deter this type of conduct is high, O'Connor said. The 7 other protesters who, again, the only one of the 8 was convicted of wounding a police officer. The other 7 received prison terms ranging from 30 to 70 years. 30 to 70 years. I'm going to say it again. The number of people convicted and have received prison terms for whatever they did in the Epstein files is 0. The number of people convicted for the deaths of Alex Preddy, Renee Good, Keith Powers, I think his name was, everyone that has been killed by ICE, who has been convicted and serving prison time because of that. We've got more ICE agents in jail for sexual abuse and child sexual abuse and all types of horrible things than we do people who have been convicted of stuff in the Epstein files. Prosecutors said the 8 are members of Antifa, a decentralized anti-fascist organization and a target of the Trump administration. Antifa is not a single organization, and I've covered this before when in previous videos talking about the NSPM7, this memorandum that is released by the government, by the White House particularly, about counterterrorism and their focus on Antifa and anti-American activities. Again, Antifa is not a central organization. There is no central figurehead. Antifa literally means anti-fascist. So if the government has a problem with people being anti-fascist and demonstrating that they are against fascism, what does that say about the government? Antifa is not a single organization, but rather an umbrella term for far-left militant groups that confront or resist neo-Nazis and white supremacists at demonstrations. But that's not even what they do. The name says it all. Anti-fascist. Nazis are inherently fascist. White supremacists are fascists, but it's not just them, it's whoever is fascist. President Donald Trump last signed an executive order designating Antifa a domestic terrorist organization, even though there is no domestic equivalent to the State Department's list of foreign terror organizations. The defendants deny any affiliation with Antifa and maintain they attended the demonstration in support of detained immigrants. Prosecutor Frank Gatto urged the judge to impose stiff penalties. People with that kind of extremist belief need extra time in prison, Gatto said. They believe violence is justified. Philip Hayes, Song's attorney, said outside the courthouse that he takes issue with the idea that the protesters are extremists. This is a bunch of kids and young adults who have a really big heart and really wanted their voice to be heard, Hayes said. It was never intended that anybody got hurt. It was never intended that any shots would be fired. Prosecutors said in court that Song had yelled, "Get to the rifles," and opened fire, striking a police officer who had just pulled up to the center. Hayes argued that Song's shots were suppressive fire and that a ricochet bullet hit the officer after he arrived on the scene and aggressively pulled out his firearm. He said his client will appeal the 100-year sentence. Song, aside from this day, has had an impeccable life. A former Marine, a good student, Hayes said. He had a lot of good qualities that were just ignored. The judge went ahead and gave as much as he could, which again, 30 to 70 years for people who had shown up to anti-fascism protests. And I think one of the people that had gotten convicted literally was just moving a box of like comic books, anti-fascist comic books and stuff like that. He got 30 years for supposedly tampering with evidence. Last week, federal prosecutors charged 15 people with impeding the Trump administration's immigration crackdown in Minnesota, the same immigration crackdown that Alex Preddy and Renee Good were shot and killed at. They claimed the demonstrators were members of Antifa who conspired against the federal government to block arrests and deportations. Oh, and by the way, during those investigations, lack of, there were several lawyers within the Department of Justice that resigned because they were assigned to try and investigate terroristic ties with the family of Renee Good, instead of investigating the shooting and the actual evidence that the entire American public got to see. They claim the demonstrators were members of Antifa who conspired against the federal government to block arrests and deportations by setting up blockades around government buildings and throwing chunks of ice at federal vehicles, among other actions. Oh, ice at ICE is going to land you time in jail, but ICE literally emptying a mag into an American citizen just exercising their First Amendment rights, and you get a fucking promotion and you get shipped off to fucking Las Vegas. But anyway, that is the video. If y'all like it, please give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe for more, and I will see y'all next time. Y'all be good.